Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Bitcoin Law Review on the Tone-Based channel. I have three lawyers with me today, and we're going to jump into stories real quick because David Silver, one of our regulars, is not able to stick around for longer than 30 minutes. So we'll do very quick intros, and then we'll jump right into it. So David, welcome back.
Oh, thank you, Tone. Love being here. Just out of curiosity, since there are four of us, who's not the lawyer?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I don't know. I feel like a lawyer now. Damn. One of these days I'm going to pretend to be. All right. Justin, we'll go with you next. Very brief intro, and then we'll give it up to Sasha. Sorry.
Sure. My name is Justin Wales. I'm based out of Miami and Los Angeles based practice. My background's in First Amendment, and then for the last several years, I've been representing folks in the crypto blockchain industry with a focus on regulation at the federal and state level. And my law firm's called Carlton Fields. It's about a 400-person firm with offices in a lot of states.
Very cool. Sasha, go for it.
Thanks, Tone. My name is Sasha Hodder. I'm a lawyer in Tampa, Florida. I work at dltlawgroup.pa. And my background, I'm actually from Canada, and I come from the trading and mutual fund industry. Before that, I worked as a trader for TD Ameritrade, and then worked with Franklin Templeton and NEI Investments.
All right, very cool. Wow, I guess we're missing Drew Hincus, and I can rename the show the Florida Bitcoin Law Review. Right? like how are all of you in Florida? Jesus.
Well, wait a second. Bloomberg has given me credit for starting the Bitcoin litigation world in Florida, and when asked why, I said because I'm licensed here. I mean, think about it. Cripsy was the first lawsuit. David Silver, Florida barred. Tezos. First federal complaint, Florida. Why? I'm not California licensed. Why would I sue him in California? So we had a lot of fun with Bloomberg, who did give me credit. No, that's the Bloomberg. No, it was Cointelegraph also that gave me the first I take responsibility for crypto. But look, we're going to start with YouTube.
Yep, let's do it. So this is your account, actually. Well, it was your account. What's his name took that from you, right? Restus?
Which one?
The Bitconnect. Or no, he got the Tezos one.
Nah, he got the Tezos.
He got the Tezos. Okay. You're still on the Bitconnect lawsuit, right?
Yeah. Everybody needs to remember, David Silver is a capitalist. I do this for the money. So there are a lot of people out there who get confused between good press and making money. Michael Jordan said the best part, the difference between rich and famous, being famous sucks. So I'll take rich any day of the week. So,
I don't know. I'm in the other boat there, man. Like I'm enjoying playing the broke bump card that has a YouTube channel, but I'm becoming popular. Right? You know, it's good, man. People take me out to dinners. People take me out to drinks everywhere I go. It's awesome.
Well,
I think David's offering to take us all out to dinner. I think that's what he said.
Yeah, I think so. I think I know who's paying for my dinner next time I'm in Florida.
Well, hold on. Only one of us works at a really fancy law firm. That'd be the guy at Carlton Fields.
I'll take you all out to dinner as well.
Todd, when Todd joins the law firm on Monday, he's going to realize we work in a strip mall in Coral Springs. It's a whole new world.
All right, let's jump into it. So YouTube was named as a defendant in the class action lawsuit against Bitconnect. Now, I actually felt some of this, right? Because on I monetized my YouTube channel, I think like maybe 6 or 8 months ago or something like that. And people were complaining to me, why are Bitconnect ads, playing on my YouTube videos? And I'm like, well, what do you want me to do about it? Go complain to YouTube. And apparently YouTube has had a significant amount of complaints calling Bitconnect a scam, and they continue to play their ads. And now, oh, hey, you're mentioned in the article. There you are. And you got a quote in too. And so did you actually bring this? Like, did you guys have like metrics of, it looks like the article quotes some very good numbers about how many people got caught on all those ads that YouTube was playing. And you guys are saying that YouTube should have known better and pulled the ads much earlier?
So let's just take a step back. I mean, I know a lot of people know about Bitconnect, but Bitconnect was a high yield investment program that claimed if you gave them any amount of money, they would give you 1% compounding return a day. And if you gave them $250,000 plus, you would get a 40% compounding monthly. Now, Tony, you're the money guy. Can anyone do that?
No, that's a it's an automatic Ponzi.
It's impossible. It's literally impossible. So they're actually quoting, this article is quoting numbers that came out of the complaint. There were 58 million views of Bitconnect promoters with over 70,000 hours of content. And this is, I've been saying this for a while. A lot of my lawsuits, I'm basically doing tobacco litigation for the first one out of the gate. So a lot of my lawsuits are lawsuits of first impression. And this lawsuit's going to be interesting because a lot of the lawsuits I filed so far, the companies come out and they have different defenses. A lot of the defenses are people in crypto are stupid. And if you do stupid things, then you're not entitled to be compensated. I don't really believe that's true. There's been smoking, there's been warnings on packs of cigarettes since the 1950s. Lots of people still smoke. So what does YouTube do differently than everyone else? Well, a lot of the YouTube, Google, Yahoo, like search engine type litigation has been about what's called the content and whether a YouTube or Google is responsible as a content provider. And a lot of the lawsuits have been based like terrorist acts. If a terrorist posts a how-to video on YouTube and someone watches it and does a terrorist act, can YouTube be held responsible? And the answer to that's primarily been no. But there's been one carve out, and that carve out is a failure for a duty to warn. And here's where the Bitconnect case gets interesting, because it became so successful and the promoters became so successful, you have the ability to monetize your success on your YouTube channel. Now, I'm assuming I don't get paid to do the show, Tone, but I'm assuming that in some of your stuff, you've monetized your successful YouTube channel.
So I have monetized my YouTube channel only because I want to be compensated in the smallest way possible from all the shit I have to put up with on the live chat and stuff. I will also say I have not cashed out a single penny of my YouTube monetization because I haven't decided what that should be used for. So it's just still sitting there anonymously on YouTube.
And that's the beauty, though. You are part of their partnership program. They actually call you a partner. Now, Justin's a much fancy lawyer than I am. He's at this big fancy firm. He understands the concept that the word partner has specific legal meaning. Justin?
Yeah. So I'll address this sort of generally, but I'll caveat it that I'm typically more defense oriented. So I read through the complaint and the allegations against YouTube, and I found a couple things about it interesting. The first is that the claim being brought is essentially a negligence claim for failure to warn. There's a whole line of cases about promoter liability, and typically there's a case called Janus, which is a Supreme Court case, and then a case from the 11th Circuit from a couple months ago that basically says that if you are accusing someone under securities laws of giving misleading statements about the sale of securities, the liability stems from the person who makes the ultimate content. So here YouTube wouldn't, because YouTube is essentially a publisher. Typically, failure to warn cases are in the products liability world. So the question, I think, becomes, can David prove that the algorithms that they're claiming filter through spam and when you file a charge that there's some misleading statement or financial fraud being committed, does that create enough of a duty on YouTube that there's some liability? I think there's a couple reasons why this case is going to be difficult against YouTube. First, if you go through YouTube's actual terms and conditions, they make pretty clear that they're not really a partner in terms of how a partnership relationship is really created. So typically a partner has liability for everything that the other partner does. Here there's indemnification clauses, and they specifically say, I pulled it up, section 6G, YouTube does not endorse any content. The person creating the content has ultimate authority. So yes, there are legal ramifications to calling someone a partner, but ultimately that's based entirely on the contract between the two people who are purportedly partners. So it may be a challenge and something that YouTube would bring. The other thing that I would just sort of mention, which struck out at me, is that this case is filed in the Southern District of Florida, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
So
That's where he lives. That's where he's filing the ball.
right.
Yeah, very smart man there.
YouTube has provisions that say that any case would have to be in, Santa Clara, California. So I imagine that they're going to try to dismiss based on a jurisdictional sort of issue, because
they're going to say lots of mean things about me. That doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
Hey,
people are mean to me all the time.
Let me ask one more question before we go to Sasha. So I'm a little confused as to what what the biggest YouTube's negligence was. Was it playing the Bitconnect ads, or was it like allowing these promoters to literally have their channels about promoting Bitconnect and profiting from the MLM part of it and the Ponzi part of it? Like is it for playing ads on my YouTube channel, or is it for they've been informed so many times, hey, this guy's YouTube channel is literally about promoting Bitconnect, which is a scam, and you shouldn't allow him to do the channel? So which of the two is it, or both?
So can you bring up the article again, Tone, and show the quote? So we kind of talk about this. There's something called the Communications Decency Act. And the Communications Decency Act basically allows YouTube, Google to get away with publishing anything without responsibility. So the quote's actually talking about what you're asking. So we're not actually suing them for the publishing the content. What the lawsuit is talking about is they were warned, and we actually, in the complaint, we list about 10 videos that itself were posted on YouTube, forget just about the generic complaints, of people saying that Bitconnect was a scam, and that they were financial partners with the promoters and Bitconnect themselves.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Okay. This is where the confusion comes in. YouTube was partners with the promoters.
So YouTube has what's called the YouTube Partner Program.
Right.
Now what Justin read, and they're going to do the terms and conditions. And every one of my cases, if terms and conditions were a get out of jail free card, I would never make a single dollar in a lawsuit, because everyone always in their terms and conditions says we have no liability and we have no responsibility. Think about why your mortgage, when you go sign a mortgage on your house, why it's 86 pages long. Because everything's your fault, nothing's the bank's fault. Yet there's a lot of bank litigation. So the defense lawyers...
Right, and every time you guys try, there is another page for you to sign when I go to buy a house.
Exactly. So and this is specific, and this is what makes the YouTube case so different. And we only served YouTube 2 days ago. I expect a letter in about 5 days, cutting off my Google pay-per-clicks campaigns, cutting off all my accounts.
Oh, you gotta have aliases, man. They're not supposed to know your real name.
See, I don't do that. I'm so stupid. I use myself. So when I get retaliated against, that's a show in and of itself. So the lawsuit is limited because of the Communication Decency Act. We're not trying to create new law. We're simply doing what the government has annexed out. And the only thing they haven't, that's been carved out by the courts, is this duty to warn. So I think we're in we'll call it fortunate position, where the people who lost money, they lost money that was foreseeable that YouTube could have stepped in. And by the way, the way we know YouTube could have stepped in, they did 2 weeks later. After 2 weeks after this all blew up, you couldn't advertise.
Yeah, they banned the ads. Okay, but your claim against YouTube, or your complaint with YouTube, is specifically those 30-second ads that they were playing in front of other people's YouTube videos that had nothing to do with Bitconnect, suckering more people in. Is that the main grievance, or is it also actual like Bitconnect promoters and their channels?
So it's both. It
is both. Okay, that's where my confusion was. Okay.
So we've sued. So the original lawsuit, don't forget, this is a consolidated class action. There were a bunch of class actions filed throughout the U.S. They got consolidated into the Florida case, and I got appointed lead co-class counsel with another major law firm out of Washington, D.C. And the lawsuit, we're suing the promoters individually. We're suing Bitconnect. the promoters individually, and now YouTube. So the promoters individually, they were the ones that, some of these guys had like 100,000 followers. So the algorithms, don't forget, as you get more successful on YouTube, there are different levels of review for each threshold you achieve that allows you more success on their algorithm for people finding you. And that's important here because, again, that means that YouTube is supposed to be looking at certain of these successful promoters more with a more critical eye. And clearly that didn't happen here.
Okay, gotcha. All right, now let's head over to Sasha. And what are your thoughts on all this and just general comments?
Yeah, I had a chance to read the complaint, David, and I thought it was excellent work reading through the whole thing. I certainly see the argument against the promoters going in your favor because we already have the case where the SEC sued Joe Montrol and the Bitfunder, and they kind of went through all of the duty to warn there if you're selling securities and there's been a hack. Like in that case, there was 6,000 Bitcoin stolen and they didn't tell anyone. They said very clearly, like, you have to warn on that. So with how it applies here, like, I think I see those two, having that duty to warn. I'll be really interested to see what happens with YouTube and that duty to warn. And just getting through YouTube's, terms of service, as Justin said, like I'm sure there's probably an arbitration clause in there too. So it would be unfortunate if we didn't get to see it in public. But
I don't think there is an arbitration clause. I will say this about the duty to warn. You can make an argument maybe that, corporations, the defense sides will point to terms and services and courts will ignore that, but traditionally courts have not really ignored that. Specifically when you're in a world where you're testing for negligence and whether a duty to warn actually was followed, the terms of service become very important. I will also say that there's a practical consideration to all of this, which is there's 10 videos listed in the complaint about Bitconnect being a scam. Well, let's assume that Bitconnect was indeed a scam, and a Ponzi scheme. There are 1.3 trillion videos on YouTube. There are 300 hours of content put up every minute. So to say that anyone can upload a video to YouTube and that constitutes a warning that would justify ultimate liability on YouTube for whatever the content that they're allowing to put up would just completely cripple YouTube as somewhat of a public entity. This is something that we've seen happen over and over again on, in the First Amendment world. And just the last point I'll make on this is Google and Facebook and YouTube, they said no more crypto ads. Well, that lasted a couple, I think a week or so before they reversed the decision. And one of the reasons why is because by just making a blanket statement that no more crypto ads, you're implicating all sorts of complicated antitrust laws that could potentially lead to liability to Google and YouTube. So I think a court ultimately will view YouTube as an as a provider of content as being in a difficult situation and may rule in their favor.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I was gonna follow up on that, Justin. And this is why I wanted to make it very clear from David which part is YouTube potentially negligent in, allowing people's YouTube channels, in which case I agree with you, or allowing the Bitconnect ads on other people's channels. And that's where I think YouTube has a responsibility of knowing if the ads that they are running are straight up Ponzi schemes with enough complaints telling them that they are.
Toad, you're asking too good of a question. I think David and I might understand this. David's money is made in certifying a class. It's not made in whether YouTube is ultimately liable or not. So the question actually becomes does the fact that some people may have been tricked into going to Bitconnect because of YouTube or because of Facebook or because of Reddit, the complaint mentions Facebook and Reddit and all these other sites, does that ruin the typicality requirement needed to certify a class? I think that's going to be the main point that YouTube's gonna allege, is that you haven't done enough to allege that there's actually a class that could hold YouTube liable.
Right, but Justin, but what do you think? Do you think YouTube should be? I'm with you. I don't think they should be as liable for people's videos, but I think they should know what ads they are rolling out, and I think they should have a department that is looking into what the hell they're advertising. And I think they need to be more responsible for the ads that they play.
I think it depends on whether they're on notice or not. If they were on notice that Bitconnect is a scam, and it was enough notice that they should have looked into it, then maybe. I don't think the responsibility necessarily is on YouTube to vet the underlying value of every product, because I mean, think about how many supplements, how many businesses, how many blockchain products are being advertised on YouTube. Does YouTube in California need to go and investigate every one in order to allow a 30-second ad? I'm not sure a court would agree with that.
Well, hold on a second, because this is an important difference. What you're discussing is the carve out on the Communications Decency Act. Mm-hmm. I agree with you that we cannot hold them responsible as a publisher of content. And here's the difference.
The partnership.
And we would lose that lawsuit. And trust me, they're going to come out and they're going to say, I'm trying to get around the CDA. That's going to be their first line of defense here. But the whole point is there's a difference between publishing and then advertising on the publishing and doing algorithms to more successful people who are specifically making money in partnership. This is why I say this is tobacco litigation before there was a successful verdict. We're testing where we're dipping our feet in. I can't tell you what's going to happen. But this is the best part about this, Tone. The first time I ever heard you speak was probably 2016 in New York. And it was, you're actually now on the side that it's wrong for people to put up free speech and advertise for anything they want. Give more regulation. This is 2 shows in a row where you're advocating. People have a responsibility to, if they're going to advertise and solicit money, they have to be more careful. And I think that's the difference here. Because there was so much success on the YouTube videos, this is different than a terrorist posting an isolated video that's not being advertised and it's not being monetized. YouTube has been shown not to have responsibility for those type of videos. Here, because of the successful platform and the successful advertising, the 58 million hits, the 70,000 hours of video, and the algorithm pointing people who put in Bitcoin investment in crypto and being sent to these specific videos, that's different than just publishing. Now we're into advertising and monetization, and that's where this lawsuit's going to go. And it's going to go 2-3 years. We served them 2 days ago. I'm sure some big fancy firm like Carlton Fields in Miami is going to send me a very nasty letter. Actually, let me rephrase that. The first letter I'm going to get is, your complaint was so well written, we need another 60 days just to analyze it before we can publicly tell you what is happening here. So they can bill for 3 months without actually responding to me. And then on the 90th day, they're going to file something that says, this is an atrocity.
Justin, reply, because you'll probably be writing that letter over the day.
Look, I think a big fancy law firm will end up taking this case, and they're going to ask for some more time to respond, I'm sure. And they're going to say this is the worst thing in the world. But, I think they have pretty good arguments on the YouTube side. I will say, I know there was litigation against publishers for running tobacco ads by people who had got cancer because they were incentivized to smoke, because it made video magazine ads and commercials back in the day would make it look so cool, and those were ultimately not very successful. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out, and I look forward to David coming back on here and responding to the nasty letter he gets.
Oh, we'll definitely cover it. We'll cover it. All right.
The terrorist videos
we're going to have to move on soon, so finish up.
Look, all I'm going to say is the terrorist videos against YouTube, all those lawsuits lost.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying this is a slam dunk by any stretch.
But if you would have lawsuit against YouTube, is there going to be a big plaque on your wall behind you?
There's going to be a new building in the strip mall. That's Drew Brees. So Drew, but that's Damon. That's the guy from Shark Tank. The guy from Shark Tank's gonna like me.
When is the Fourth Amendment amended complaint against Facebook?
All right, Sasha,
Partner nine.
so final thoughts on this.
I think they explained the crux of the matter pretty well. I'll be interested to watch as it all plays out.
Yeah, this case is definitely more in their domains, especially David. The only thing that I will say before we move on is you did provide those numbers, like 70,000 hours of content, generated 58,000 views. But I want, like, as far as like me, again, I want the full separation of the YouTube ads influence and content creators influence, and I would love to see those numbers separated.
Tone, how many hours did you talk about? Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Tone, how much warnings did you give about Bitconnect or other content creators on the side saying that it was a scam? We didn't incorporate those hours to balance it out.
Well, no, I mean, I gave very, very little, but I guarantee you at least 40 ads. There were at least 40 videos of mine at least played a single ad, and I get like 10,000 viewers per episode, right? So the Bitconnect ads must have been watched by at least 30, 40,000 of my own followers probably watch the Bitconnect ads, unless you go and get YouTube Red or YouTube Premium, which is what I have to avoid all ads. So I don't even know what's being played as an ad on my channel. Like, it's too bad I don't get to decide which ads are being run on my own YouTube channels. But I don't know, Adela, are you still with us? Or I know you turned off your camera, but feel free to comment on the YouTube thing, or we're moving on. Maybe not. Okay, so Adela is, oh wait, hold on. I think she left and came back.
Oh, she's there.
She's here now. Okay. Adela, there you are. No, you're still muted.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Hey, no, sorry about that.
That's okay.
Friday is like my Monday, so I'm just kind of running around.
Yeah, we can see that.
Yeah.
Any comments on the David Silversoon YouTube?
Well, I'm obviously on Team David, right? I love it. That's my last thoughts on it. I am eager to talk about the LBC stuff. But no, I think they had it covered.
All right.
Yeah.
So before we get to the LBC stuff, we got one more. We got, I'll go back to screen share here. We only got David for another 10 minutes. There's a couple of news all related to politics. So 2 days ago, or yesterday even, Trump signs an executive order to, get more serious about, I guess, all kinds of money laundering, mentioning cryptocurrencies, getting attorney generals involved. Here is the link to the executive order itself. It's the executive order regarding the establishment of the task force on market integrity and consumer fraud. Again, this seemed unreasonably general. I mean, I glanced at this and this seemed incredibly general to me. So let's talk about this first, and then we're going to talk about the DNC hack. I don't know, who wants to jump on this? Justin, you want to go first on this one?
Yeah, it doesn't seem to be that big of a practical sort of move by the Trump administration. The Obama administration had previously had a financial integrity task force, and by this own order, it merely replaces it and sort of redefines what the goals are. I think in the executive order, it specifies crimes against the elderly and veterans. What's most interesting about this is the timing of it. We know from Rod Rosenstein's press conference today that Trump had been briefed earlier in the week on the results of the Guccifer investigation and the indictments of the Russian hackers. So Rosenstein in his press conference said that at least some of the hacks were facilitated using cryptocurrency. So it's sort of interesting.
Right. That was going to be the other topic in this general case. Feel free to comment on it as well. So you agree with me? This seems like just broad, and all it basically is maybe they wanted to stick the word cryptocurrencies into a prior division, and Trump wanted to, add different people or additional people into this task force, but they're not really doing anything different. They're just rewarded a couple of things and added a bunch of more, divisions into this.
At maybe a practical level, what it allows is it allows the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the SEC, the Department of Justice to communicate a little more easy with regard to their investigations on crypto crimes. But I don't think this gives any more power or really signifies that much in the scheme of things.
Okay, so the other government-related story for us is apparently the Russians Bitcoin is now being blamed along with the Russians for hacking the Democratic National Convention and stealing Hillary's emails. And like, I started reading this, I could not finish reading this because this is so ridiculous. So apparently a Russian government-backed operation that decided, hey, here's a bunch of money. Instead of just using this money to pay people, here's what we're going to do. We're going to waste that money on mining equipment, which is totally stupid. And then we're going to mine Bitcoin, which may or may not be profitable. Then we're going to take that Bitcoin and we're going to convert that Bitcoin back into the same money that the Russians apparently gave us. And that's how we're going to fund the operation. How ridiculous does this sound? Anyone? Feel free to jump in.
Very.
So, interestingly, Tone, I don't know if you saw this tweet by Representative Emmanuel Cleaver, but he basically tweeted out, I've been warning of the potential dangers of Bitcoin being used by nefarious actors. Now we know Russia used cryptocurrency to fund their meddling campaign in 2016. The crypto industry needs to step their game up. So, of course, Ricardo Spagni responds with, that's nothing. I've been warning people about the dangers of kitchen knives and nobody's listening. So, there was yet another kitchen knife incident where a 14-year-old boy was stabbed several times. Kitchen knives must be dealt with swiftly. I think he's really making a very good point here. Well, first of all, this representative has no idea what he's talking about. I mean, first of all, we're dealing with what I actually am starting to think is a weirdly overhyped witch hunt. And believe me, I am no fan of Trump or his group of functionaries, but I really feel like they're really trying to go for, these really amazingly ridiculous sounding things. So I don't even know what to think about this. To me, this is just one more sort of hype piece to get people all excited and another sort of giant nothing burger.
Right. You're in Washington, so you're closer to this than our Florida-inspired panel, other than you. But so and what are your thoughts on the executive order?
I mean, I don't even look at any executive orders nowadays. There's so many of them being signed and nothing is really happening. There's not really follow-up. I mean, I wish this guy had taken some time to actually read up on Bitcoin and maybe how a blockchain could help solve some of these issues, But I mean, that's just it in a nutshell. I just don't even take this stuff very seriously. I don't know. Maybe that's not what you're looking for. It's not very deep, but that's where I am on this.
All right, David, jump in here before we lose you.
I'm gonna jump in because I gotta go to my happy hour. My only thought on this is, can we just be honest that the U.S. is doing this all over the world? Why are we so offended that people are doing it to us? I mean, isn't that the whole purpose of like the CIA, like covert operations, trying to get involved in other people's elections? I mean, I tell this to everybody. I voted liberal Democratic my entire life. I'm no Trump fan either. But I mean, come on, we're surprised that the Russians are trying to infiltrate our news and hack us. We do this all over the world. People do it to us. That's the whole point of being, you're supposed to be better than this. The fact, if someone asks me what the biggest issue I have with this, it's not that they use Bitcoin. It's the media outlets who believe the false stories that were being sold, and everything else. I can care less. I thought the Bitcoin was a small part of this. The interesting part about the executive order, I got asked this morning to go speak to a group of assistant attorney generals. So I guess they were actually taking it seriously, or that was really coincidental timing. But I'm going up to DC to go speak to a bunch of assistant attorney generals to tell them what I think they can do better and how private litigation has helped shed light on the bad things in crypto and the ICO space. I did find it funny, though, they specifically referred to ICOs and not crypto as a whole.
Oh, that in the executive order.
No, when I got invited to speak, and the person who sent me the invite, I didn't read the executive, but they were very specific that they're still hyper focused on the ICOs versus the crypto and
yeah, maybe they're starting to understand where the scam is here, right? Like Bitcoin itself isn't, but ICOs are.
Well, I don't disagree on that particular point, but this was like last week's conversation. I think there's going to be a lot of people who find out that things they believe are decentralized are actually centralized, and it's going to blow up the whole model of what the government started to do. I think the government kind of dipped its toe in, and they dipped their toe in the wrong place. And in about 5 years from now, everything we think to be true today is going to be the opposite.
Well, yeah, because not those that watch this show or participate in this show. I'm pretty sure we're all going to be vindicated. But hey, Justin, so I'm going to get your thoughts next. But right before that,
all right, have a good day, everybody. Thanks. I'm out.
All right, David. See you next week, hopefully.
Bye, David.
Bye, David.
Yeah. So
Come say hi when you come to DC.
Absolutely.
Hey, Justin, before you go, Adela said something I want to highlight. There is actually two issues involved here, right? Especially on the DNC story. Oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry, Justin, you already commented on this, but feel free to go again. Then we're going to get Sasha in. But there's two separate issues that are involved with the whole Bitcoin involved in DNC. So one of them is what Adela was talking about like what Fluffy Pony replied. Basically, they don't understand Bitcoin. It's not Bitcoin's fault. Bitcoin is just there. It's like the US dollar. That's one issue. The other issue is an actual, there's a technical issue that they don't understand what Bitcoin is and how it works. And the other issue is the idea that people would, people that are gonna, that have the money, that need money to finance an operation, and they decide to first buy mining equipment, mine Bitcoin, then sell that Bitcoin to finance the operation. These people are probably too dumb to execute any kind of a thing. Like conceptually, this is ridiculous. And that goes outside of the misunderstanding. I guess they're both misunderstandings of Bitcoin, but from two different perspectives. So again, Justin, one more thought, and then we got to get Sasha's thoughts.
Sure. So I think with this story and the reporting around this issue, as with nearly everything in the space, there's a definitional issue. So it would be highly unlikely to me that they set up a mining operation in order to fund this nefarious hack. What maybe happened was people who were hacking and who had the ability of hacking also happened to be mining Bitcoin, and you're just sort of conflating two actions into one. With regard to, the story generally about, indicting Russians who hacked and whether we do the same thing overseas, you can maybe make the argument that we've had, bad action. The U.S. government has had bad actions overseas, but I don't really view this as a nothing burger or a witch hunt, or if it is a witch hunt, we're uncovering quite a lot of witches. I don't think the Bitcoin or crypto aspect to it is anything remarkable. You can launder and fund bad actions with all sorts of currencies and assets. This gets headlines by linking it to Bitcoin or putting cryptocurrency in a headline, but ultimately I don't know if it results in any policy change or any actual real news, because there's crypto involved in the story. I think the story happens to be because of the hack.
But yeah, no, that's a good point. I mean, if there were, I personally, I don't understand why Russia would even get involved in this. I understand why Russia would want Trump to win. I was actually in Russia. I was in Moscow when Trump got elected, because I literally flew out to Russia the day after the election I was home when he got elected, but the next day I was going to Russia. And people in Russia were happy that Trump got elected because they know what, they're very familiar with communism. And to a Russian, a Democrat is pretty much a socialist, which is pretty much a closet communist. That's the Russian mentality. So Russians, any Russian that is an American that came to Russia in the 90s, and they would never, ever, ever vote for any Democrat. They will only vote Republican. That's just their mentality. So I know the country of Russia wanted Trump to win.
Tone, can I ask you a question?
Mm-hmm.
Since you've been there so recently, what is the general, you're like, okay, a lot of people like him there, but what is the general sort of like vibe like? When you go to like a restaurant or you just talk to random people, is it just most of the people that you talk to like him? Is that what you found?
It's not even about liking Trump. It has nothing to do with Trump. It's the fact that a Democrat is not president of America. Talk to any Russian over the age of 40 right now, because that means that if you are Russian over the age of 40, you are pretty familiar with the communism in Russia, because that's now been about 20 years. So that means you were, at least of voting age when Russian communism fell, and they would never, ever vote. I mean, there's always exceptions, but like 95% of those people will never vote for a Democrat.
Right, but Tone, you're looking at this from, a geopolitical view, and maybe that's, a good way of looking at it. But there's also just, it's sort of funny saying the capitalistic view of Russian hacking, but they broke into servers in order to find data and then sell data that would influence the election. So you had, in the indictment, I read the indictment earlier today, you had a congressional candidate who was unnamed, who actually had conversations with some of these folks about getting data. So
I'm a little, to be honest, I'm a little skeptical on blaming the Russians for Hillary losing. Like what I said earlier about Russians wanting Trump to win. I mean, it doesn't mean that they were actually going to help Trump win. It just means they were happy for the American people. Like when I was in Russia the day after the election, like the people that I spoke to were like happy for the American citizens that Trump won. So that's completely independent of that. Now, if it is proven true, and I don't really believe, the Democratic losing side blaming Russia for everything. Now, even if whoever the hackers were, you're right. It is very possible that those hackers are very familiar with Bitcoin, and Bitcoin is part of their life, independent of this one particular incident. Maybe they demanded to be paid in Bitcoin for their work of hacking, and maybe and I still I will never. Again, I don't know what proof I would need to see to believe that these hackers were Russian. Because I just don't believe whatever that side of the government says. All right, Sasha, sorry, you haven't spoken in ages. Go for it.
That's okay. Yeah, reading this, it was just interesting. They use prepaid cards and peer-to-peer currency. So it's like what Adela or Fluffy Pony said about the knives. Like, it doesn't matter what if they're using cash or, any kind of transfer of value, it doesn't have to be Bitcoin. So it is kind of unfortunate that Bitcoin gets, it always gets a bad name in the news when it's associated with any crime. And I think people forget that cash is used for crime just as easily as Bitcoin is.
Even more.
Yeah.
Even more. Because,
it gives them another scapegoat. It gives them something else to blame other than themselves or their technological incompetence of protecting emails. Like, hey, Hillary, maybe you shouldn't have a server in your closet.
Mm-hmm. And then it also goes on to say that they were able to get the Bitcoin on peer-to-peer exchanges that are, known as decentralized exchanges or less tightly controlled. And I wonder what exchanges the people were using for that. Like, that would be interesting to know. I guess, in a lot of the areas of the world, they don't require KYC information, but in most of the exchanges here, you have to put your information in to be able to use the exchange. So They could do it at an ATM machine somewhere in the rest of the world, or just peer-to-peer transfer too, I guess. But what decentralized exchange they used would be interesting. And it's kind of on the other side, it's in a way nice that they can't identify it on certain areas. Like, it means the privacy is still there on some forms of transfer, whether they're using it for hacking or not. It's nice to see that there still is a way to transfer Bitcoin anonymously, because in America, it's become pretty much that you have to identify yourself to make any kind of transfer of any size anyway, which I think we're going to talk about in a later story. So that was just my kind of interpretation on this one. And then on the executive order, what I was wondering here is, are they doing this? Are they bringing all these areas of the government together so that they can get, like, some types of the government, I think, have higher capability of surveillance? Like the FBI would be able to perform more surveillance than the SEC, no doubt. So are they merging everyone so that they can get whatever agency can do the most spying, have them looking into whatever it is? Or maybe that's not what any part of it. But to me, that's, the first thing I thought was that it was for the purpose of surveillance.
I didn't read it as granting any new powers. It seems to me to be informational sharing.
But, right, but does that mean that, like, some agencies that couldn't get certain information can now get them using a agency that has higher informational gathering capability?
I believe that, if, let's say, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau wanted to do an investigation, they could go and contact the Department of Justice and work it out. Maybe this makes the communications cleaner, but I don't know.
Okay.
All right, guys, let's jump to our next story. This one is very unfortunate, and but I really do want to talk about an LA local Bitcoin trader goes by the screen name Bitcoin Madam, was facing up to 30 months in prison. And it looks like she only got a 1-year sentence, potentially out in 10 months, I believe. And it was, her real name is Teresa Talley. And I actually met her. I met her at PorcFest about 3 weeks ago or so, 3 or 4 weeks ago. She was at PorcFest. I mean, she didn't want to go on camera, obviously, because she's not silly like the Bitconnect people. She has her sentencing coming up. It was coming up 2 weeks after the event in New Hampshire. But I did talk to her about it. So that was a very interesting conversation. So she was one of the biggest local Bitcoin dealers in LA. And like it says in the article, she did about $6 million to $9.5 million worth of dollars worth of transactions between 2014 and 2017. But she was trying to do it, as legally as she thought was possible. Now, she did not, it looks like she did not register with FinCEN, but she claimed all of her income. She was paying taxes on all of her dealings. Like, she wasn't, she wasn't trying to, like, hide it. She was doing this as her job. And I guess they got her on to, and I'm not even sure if she was or wasn't registered with FinCEN. I don't, maybe it says in the article. I know I read it a little while ago. I don't remember if she was or wasn't registered with FinCEN. She might have even been registered with FinCEN. The way they got her seems like the same way they got Morgan Raccoons, who I interviewed on this YouTube channel as well. Basically, one of the buyers of, one of the sellers of Bitcoin to her basically implied that the Bitcoin was earned through illicit activity, whether it was, drug purchases or something like that. And that was an undercover agent. And that's how a lot of these people get caught. And I guess the real moral of the story is, if you're doing a local Bitcoin deal, and the moment you even, you may want to record these things for your own record because you don't want to get entrapped, but the moment you even hear your counterparty mention anything illicit, whether done with the cash, with the Bitcoin before the deal, or they mention something like oh, great, thanks for the Bitcoin. I'm going to go, buy some drugs. Now, at that point, you got to walk away and say, hey, I can't do this deal with you. I have to walk away. Or if the deal is already done, say, hey, well, I wish I didn't do this deal with you. Please never call me again. But they actually expect you to report it as well to FinCEN. So this becomes a problem. So I'll grab your thoughts. I don't know who wants to go first here. Do I pick somebody or somebody wants to pick?
I'll go first because I'll say if you read, I read the indictment. Yeah, I read the indictment, and a couple things struck out at me. The first is that it was specifically alleging violation of federal AML and BSA, Bank Secrecy Act rules. So for those who want to, traffic through local Bitcoin, I think you need to take this very seriously. They asked for 30 months, and one of the reasons why they asked for 30 months, and this is in the indictment, is to send a message. So I would hope anyone watching this does get that message sent. With regard to your point, Tone, that you should maybe record, you should also be cognizant of the fact that depending on what state you are, you actually need the person who you're recording's permission before you record, or else you're in a separate sort of criminal area. What was most interesting to me about this case, though, was that they didn't allege that she was required to have a money transmission license under California state rules, which is interesting for a couple reasons. Every state has their own money transmission scheme, and California is sort of interesting because they have soft guidance that suggests that crypto is not deemed money for the purpose of money transmission. This sort of gets into our next story about Espinoza or what have you. But this is specifically about FinCEN. And if you are someone who is trying to operate a money service business, it's not so difficult to actually comply with FinCEN's requirements. It's basically notice, and then there's AML and KYC procedures that you can go through. But a lot of that, if you're really doing $6 to $9.5 million a year, you can offload that on third parties. So you are going through an entity set up specifically to vet the transactions you're going through. So to me, Teresa she probably had actual warning for quite a long time that this was a risk she ran. And the government wanted to send a message by pursuing such an aggressive prison sentence.
I don't think that women should be going to jail, honestly. I think, but for their interference, and enticement or whatever, like, she would not be in this situation. Obviously, I mean, lots of people don't really understand what their responsibilities are, especially in such a new industry. But according to FinCEN, the way that FinCEN sort of translates the Bank Secrecy Act, an exchanger is a person that is engaged as a business in the exchange of virtual currency for real currency funds or other virtual currency. So it's pretty clear. And if you are that, then you have the responsibilities of a money services business conferred onto you by that virtue. Fair enough. You have to record keep and you have to report. You have to do SARS. You have to file amounts over $10,000. Okay, but she was also paying her taxes, right, Tone? She told you that she was paying her taxes, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's take her at her word. Let's give her the benefit of the doubt that she's paying her taxes, yeah? I think where she really fell is by that whole, might go use this to buy some drugs. I mean, did she tell you exactly what happened?
That was. I mean, the article says the same thing. It was an undercover. It was an undercover that was either buying Bitcoin, that was selling Bitcoin to her, that implied that he earned that Bitcoin through illicit activity.
Right, and so this is the sort of thing that that really makes my blood boil. It's but for this person messing around with what seems to be a very decent, law-abiding woman, implying that these funds were illicitly obtained or going to be used for illicit, actions. This woman would probably have not gotten in trouble. I've dealt a lot with the regulators in California, and they're very clear that we have not dealt with this. We don't consider Bitcoin to fall under our definitions of what legal tender is in the state of California. So I really think that basically because, we have some overeager functionaries, a good woman is going to go to jail, because why not give her the chance to remedy this? Like, why is it a bad thing for a person to make some profit in a new industry?
And it's not like she was making gigantic profit. I mean, the documents are claiming she made about $300,000 over a 3-year period. So that's approximately $100,000 a year, which for a state like California is not that high a salary. This was just simply a job for her. And yeah, it says right there that it was an $80,000 deal, probably not one deal, probably several deals. And the proceeds of the Bitcoin came through drug trafficking, or that's what the agent claimed. And it's how they got her. And once you get her on something, you can send her to jail. Now you start tacking on shit like, oh, well, she didn't register with FinCEN as a money services business, even though Justin just said in California she probably didn't have to. But hey,
have a money transmitter transmitter license in California.
Right, but hey, once they can already put her away, now they start tacking it on, and then they're saying, hey, she was also fueled a black market financial system. Once they got you on a technicality, they can then say whatever the hell they want to tack on the biggest sentence they could.
Well, and they have lower burdens, frankly, they really do, than average people. So this woman would have had to really prove her innocence, which I actually don't think she's guilty of anything, to be quite honest with you. Maybe that makes me...
Right, well, Brian Klein was her defense attorney. I know him. I reached out to him. We'll try and get him on the show. He said he can't do it this month, but maybe we can get him in August. Maybe we'll bring this case back up when he's on. All right, final thoughts, Adela, then we go to Sasha.
I'm sorry, what now?
Final thoughts, and then we go to Sasha.
Oh yeah, no, I really think it's kind of disgusting that they would spend so many resources in trying to bring a woman like that down for seemingly no good reason. It's I mean, who here has not traded on local Bitcoins? I've traded.
Let's not incriminate ourselves.
All right, okay, fine. But that brings me to something really important. So with local Bitcoins, that's one of the things that we're actively trying to do at this point, is to take the necessary steps to avoid that the users of local Bitcoins don't get into these situations. And I sat with the founder and co-founder of local Bitcoins about 2 months ago, and we really had a conversation of about the situation. And it really is very concerning to them that so many people are kind of taking the fall for using their service. And so things are going to change at local Bitcoins in a lot of ways, and it's because of these actions. And really, you can just thank the regulators and actually not even the regulators at this point, but law enforcement. You can thank them for that. So expect to see a lot more enhanced due diligence at onboarding, and just a whole different sort of experience.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that that's where we are with everything now, is that you really, a company can't operate safely without requiring all of your KYC information. Like if you saw, the exchanges in America in this past couple months, like they're actually holding people's money hostage and saying, unless you give us your, passport and photo and let us KYC you, we won't let you withdraw the money. And it's because of this type of, it's so vague on the money transmission laws too. Like it's different in every single state. And the process of getting each state's license is it's going to take a couple years, for a company to start it, it will take years to get.
Interestingly, Sasha, I have to give massive props to the state of Washington, and they'll probably shoot me for saying this, but they're actually rolling out a pilot program whereby companies seeking money transmitter licenses in various states can apply through them. And what that will do is cover about 12 states at this point. So,
that is fantastic.
Yeah. So I was on the phone with them yesterday morning, and I was like, they were like, do you have any more questions? And I was like, who came up with this? It's amazing. This is exactly what we've been waiting for. So they have taken a massive amount of initiative and done that. So that in itself, interestingly, saves a company like $300,000, right?
Mm-hmm.
Incredibly, if you want to tack on like legal fees to the application fees and the bonds and the this and the audits and the blah, it's extremely expensive. If you're rolling out through the 50 states, you can expect to see pricing just for the registration, the licensure, just for the licensure and everything that goes into the licensure. 50 states, you can expect to spend something like, $150,000 just in government filing fees. Legal fees, different matter. So you're just
And the bonds you got to put up.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, as we know, some of the states have not dealt with, with the definition of, with changing the definition of money and legal tender in their states under their current money transmitter laws. But, a lot of companies have just gone out and gone, okay, better safe than sorry, Coinbase and BitPay, etc. So it's an extremely expensive thing, and I'm baffled that there isn't sort of like a uniform act just adopted by all of the states. I know there was some talk about doing this several years ago, but evidently somebody's not doing their job because, except Washington.
Yeah, that sounds like good progress. I know. I looked into it in Canada just out of curiosity, and what I found is you can get your license in about 2 weeks, and the banks will work with you with it. Where here, I think once you have that money transmission license, it's still hard to get bank accounts set up to actually move the money that you have the license now to move.
It's impossible. I mean, I have people calling me going like, I will give you $100,000 if you can get me a bank account. I'm not kidding.
I'm charged with opening someone an account this week too, and it's been a nightmare.
Well, reach out, I can help, but it's rough. It's really rough. And interestingly, the banks that are actually granting accounts on a very sort of selective case-by-case basis, they don't even want people to know that they're doing that. Trying to sort of keep out a flood and go sort of, very selective EDD procedure.
All right, guys, I wanna ask something else. So as far as, I know California seems to be a special case for filing for a money transmission license. And if you're a money services business, so if you are, let's say, a popular local Bitcoin dealer, so here's my question. I don't know, hopefully one of you can answer it. Do you have to be like a two-way dealer, like buy Bitcoin and sell Bitcoin to be considered a personal money services business? Or if you only go in one direction, is it still considered a money services business? Or is it simply dependent on, are you taking a cut? Like, for example, if I was to buy Bitcoin and sell Bitcoin, let's say I'm selling Bitcoin, but I'm not charging a percent. Like, I'm not actually profiting. Like, I'm not buying Bitcoin from one person, selling it to another person while taking a cut on the money. Let's say I'm simply selling Bitcoin at market cost, or going out and like buying Bitcoin for myself, even if I'm doing it two ways, but it's not my job. I don't profit from doing that. Could I be a money services business?
Yeah, you still can be. They're so broad on what they define, what FinCEN defines as a money service business. It's, I think you can argue either way under the facts that you just presented, but it certainly, you wouldn't, they have some language in there that says that anything that if you're in the business of, and that's key. You said you're not in the business of it, but so I'm looking at it, if it was primarily your business and you were taking a little bit of a cut on it, then you definitely have to register. But I think it would be safer if you're doing it just to register anyway. But let's see what the other two think.
Yeah, so the way FinCEN defines it is exchanger and administrator. That's pretty broad. So this whole discussion sort of, I think, brings up a good topic of what is the role of sort of a lawyer in advising a company that wants to do an act. And I think there's an advocacy side. It may be that Bitcoin Maven is being unjustly prosecuted, and that's something that we should talk about. But I think the real value is we know how the federal government is acting. We saw with the Trump executive order and some of the conversations at the federal level that they're paying more and more attention to, I would say, actions that are conducted with cryptocurrency. So for those watching who want to go on local Bitcoin and want to transact in large amounts over $10,000, I think what this case did was it put everyone on warning that you need to comply with these rules, whether just or unjust.
Hold on, Justin, one second. Now, I thought that for the purposes of FinCEN, the $10,000 round number is totally irrelevant. I don't think from what I understood, that doesn't matter. You can be selling, $300 to $400 every week, and you can still be a money services business. While if you want to sell $100,000 worth of Bitcoin that you mined 4 years ago, that's perfectly fine.
Well, that seems to fall under the definition of user. So if you're a user, right? So remember, FinCEN isn't making any laws, okay? They're simply there to issue like interpretive guidance that clarifies the applicability of the Bank Secrecy Act, right? So their definition of user, because it's really very, very important that we have to remember, the Bank Secrecy Act does not mention convertible virtual currencies. Not in one place, not in one area. It's just not there, okay? So what FinCEN has done is issued guidance on the Bank Secrecy Act and defined user, okay, as a person that obtains virtual currency to purchase goods or services. Now you could flip that around. So if you're just selling your own stuff, Tone, like you made a lot of Bitcoin in previous years, and you want to offload some of that, and you're selling it. You're just selling your own property, right? You got to reflect that somewhere, though. So it has to be reflected in your tax filings or whatever. But you would squarely probably fall under the definition of user and not transmitter. Transmitter is when you start, that sort of right, exchange.
But I have that exchanger definition pulled up right here. It's a person engaged as a business in the exchange of virtual currency for real currency funds or other virtual currencies. So yeah, I think Adela, you're right. Like you have to be a business that's purpose is to exchange the money.
But then again, it raises the question as a business, if a court thinks you're as a business, a judge thinks you're as a business, a jury thinks you're as a business, you are as a business. So I guess, we can really just kind of push it and say, I wish FinCEN weren't so broad. They are very, very, very broad in how they define things and how they do not define things. I wish they were more narrow and they would explain more things. But of course, it gives them a lot more power to be this broad, because then they can fit a lot more things under their umbrella and their purview.
All right, Justin, you want to jump back in here?
Yeah, well, I would agree that a more narrow definition and maybe more guidance from FinCEN could be helpful. Where I think a lot of the challenge comes for people operating is not complying with FinCEN's requirements, which I think are pretty well known and not so difficult to comply with. I think it's understanding how each of the state's various laws come into play. Quite a lot of my day-to-day is dealing with the different state regulators and assessing how they're interpreting their own legislation and how they're changing the legislation. And it's a cluster, every state treats everything a little differently. Sometimes you have legislation that says one thing, but the attitude of the regulators is another. So it's important for those of us on the crypto bar who's interacting with these regulators to act as educators for them, allowing them to demonstrate that not everything is as scary and sort of nefarious as they may be inclined to think. One resource that may be of some use to your viewers, Tone, is I have a pretty in-depth article about how each state treats cryptocurrency and blockchain, and a list of all the legislation that each state has come up with, as well as some of the software guidance. I can send it to you to link.
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
I'll put it in the video description, and maybe we can pull up that article on when the topic comes up again, because the topic is going to come up again.
Yeah.
All right. So one more thought is like, man, it's gonna be so dangerous for me to do these shows. So so one more thought on this. Heard from a friend. So when you have a situation where you have to sell Bitcoin to, let's say, pay bills, and do you really want to tell the IRS that what you're selling is Bitcoin, right? I mean, you don't have to sell them what you've sold to pay your bills. You have, hey, I made X amount of money because I get paid in eggs, I get paid in milk and for my work, and I sell that, and here's my taxes on the money that I make. Because I just have this like eerie feeling you're trying to be good, you tell the IRS you're a crypto person, and you just put yourself on the radar for every other government agency to look at you.
Are you serious?
What?
I mean, we've kind of been living this reality for a long time, though. You know, I feel like you just had a come to Jesus moment.
No. I knew about this for my whole life in crypto. I'm just like warning people that may not be very certain. We are going to get a tax accountant on the show as well one of these days. Okay, I don't want to just random. I have another thing to ask on this story. Maybe you guys can comment. Okay, so from my understanding, it says here she made about $300,000. Oh, I'm sorry, she made about $300,000 a year, not over a 3-year period. So that's not a bad salary. Okay, now from my conversation with her personally, she was paying all her taxes. So can someone please explain to me this part? She had to forfeit 40 Bitcoin. They also confiscated $300,000 in cash and 25 bars of gold. Can someone explain to me what jurisdiction allows them to confiscate your personal net worth? But you were running, you got caught running your business, but like, that's your personal money. How do they have the right to just confiscate your money?
So, Ton, this is actually a really controversial practice, and there's a lot of literature out there about the idea of criminal and civil forfeiture. And in fact, I believe the Supreme Court of the United States next year is taking on a case that would implicate the government's ability to do this. But basically, anything that touches the crime, anything that the government can point to, for the most part, that even touches the crime, they can go and seize it and claim that it is an instrumentality or has been benefited by this bad act, and they forfeit, and the person being charged has to forfeit it. And they can appeal, and there's certain administrative procedures that you can go through to challenge that, but the government has quite a lot of latitude. That's why, you know, if you're driving in your car, you get pulled over and you have, you know, a gram of weed, they can forfeit the car in some instances. It's a huge power that the government has, and that's being challenged at the Supreme Court next year.
But wait for it. Only because the car is could have been complicit in a crime.
Yeah.
A car. So no, I'm gonna start screaming here because actually, like, I hate the idea of civil and asset forfeiture, especially because I know there are people that were not able to pay for their defense.
Yeah.
You know, because all their shit was taken.
Yeah, you know, there's an argument that could be made, because a lot of times what happens is you're charged of a crime and they freeze your assets, and you can't use those assets to then hire an attorney. So there's all sorts of constitutional issues with regard to that. I would encourage your viewers, actually, there's a really good John Oliver video segment about civil forfeiture that lays out a lot of the issues in a very interesting and funny way. It's a civil forfeiture.
Yeah, it's actually a good one. I saw that one. It's actually really funny and kind of on point. I mean, he's a little silly, but it was really on point.
All right. So sticking on this note, I think Bitcoin and the concept of Bitcoin is going to go a long way to, fight back by hiding some of your funds in crypto. So obviously they can't seize your crypto assets. However, in this particular case, it says here she had to forfeit 40 Bitcoin. So that means the government knew that she had 40 Bitcoin. So her OPSEC on her cold storage might not have been very good. However, like what happens in this case, right? I know the government's going to fight back, right? In the case of Trendon Shavers, basically he had a bunch of Bitcoin in cold storage, and when he was interviewed with his lawyer Jason Seibert basically said, yes, the government got every single Satoshi of his Bitcoin. So how does that happen? There's like, do you go into like a little dark room and then some guy says, hey, so here's the deal. You can get 20 years, or we'll give you, let's say, 4 years, as long as you give us every Satoshi you have hidden somewhere. And if in the future we find out that you lied, you immediately go to prison for like another 20 years. Like how does that work? How do they force your cold storage Bitcoin out of you? And is that the kind of tactic that they could be using in the future?
So typically what happens is the government goes and they enter into a conversation with your lawyer, and the lawyer, your lawyer comes up with the terms of a plea agreement. And what I guess could happen is the government will say, as part of the conditions of your plea, you agree to hand over all, Bitcoin that, was either procured in order to exchange on local Bitcoin or whatever, they are, or to provide a full list of assets that you have. And it could be that, the person being accused of the crime identifies, well, I have 40 Bitcoin stored in, in these cold storages and these accounts. And then as part of the agreement for a lighter prison sentence, they, agree to hand it over. But there's just an immense amount of leverage that the government has when they're threatening you with,
Hey, Justin, do you think because she might have declared that 40, she probably has another 40 somewhere? So she's like, hey, you know what? I'll go sit in federal prison for like a year and, I'll come out.
I mean, if I were her lawyer, I would say it's never a good idea to hide money from the federal government if your plea is based on handing over that money, because, she has a year, 10 months in prison? I mean, it's no amount of Bitcoin, I think, is worth your freedom. That's my position.
I'm sorry. I honestly, if I were Teresa, I would not tell him where it all were. I'm sorry. I might get in trouble for this. I hope my bosses aren't watching this.
Make sure you put it away. This is why I'm still really mad. I had to like break into some cold storage that was literally like cold storage. I put away in like 2014, 2013. Yeah. I had no intention of touching it for 10 to 15 years. And freaking my greed to get 10% by selling the Bcash got me out of that. And now I'm like, damn, I'm almost with you, Adela. Like, you gotta have like something so deep in cold storage where you are so worried you're gonna forget your own password that you almost do. And then if you do end up with like a 1 or a 2 year sentence or a 3 year sentence, I recommend you not touch it for like at least another 10 to 15 years. Like wait for a whole turnover of every single person that was ever involved in that case to completely not be associated with the government anymore.
I mean, I have assets that I can't recover, even if I wanted to recover it. Because again, pre-2014, blockchain fucking craze or whatever happened there, the whole ICO bullshit. Not all ICOs are bad, but before that sort of like massive wealth jump into the Bitcoin space, I really didn't take passwords all that seriously. I mean, it just wasn't like all that serious, to be quite honest. When Bitcoin was riding at $150, $220 or $220, I thought I was a freaking millionaire. Like, what? $220? So yeah, there are assets that I wouldn't be able to get into even if I wanted to. And so it's like, doesn't matter how much you coerce me or, take my ledgers and my trezors and all, everything, whole 9 yards, right? I wouldn't be able to get into it. So have a good time trying to brute force that bitch,
Well, what they'll do is after you get out of prison, they'll just monitor, and if they discover that you've used the money, you'll go back to jail. I mean,
right. That's why I said if you are gonna do that, you may not want to touch it until everyone involved with that case is retired.
Right, but I mean, I recently found a blockchain wallet that I had from 2014 that I've totally forgotten about as well.
Mhm.
And like one day I was like, oh, okay. But I mean, I can imagine sitting down, being in Teresa's shoes and completely not remembering that at all.
Not that we're giving away legal advice here. Thank God I'm not a lawyer, so I can't
There's
get.
no legal advice going on right here. This is Friday afternoon.
Yeah,
Especially-
give up all your bitcoins. That's the proper legal
Well,
advice.
you know what's interesting about that though is that I don't think that's the actual problem with the average person's going to have, is that the cops are going to come and you're going to need to show where your Bitcoin is. You can't remember. I think the actual problem that we need to face as sort of a community is the massive amount of Bitcoin that is just lost because I get hit by a bus and no one in my family is able to then find the Bitcoin. So the challenge is that there are solutions that you could potentially use to solve that problem that could in the future give the government a backdoor into actually figuring out where all of your assets are stored. And this is a philosophical issue that I think people are trying to fix right now.
No, it is. It is. Pamela Morgan of Third Key Solutions has been working on that problem for a long time now. And I don't know, like to me, like I can't think of a good solution here because if I come up with a way for my family to recover my Bitcoin, that means the government might have a way to come up with a way to recover my Bitcoin.
It's true.
So this is Pam's new book. I need to tell her she needs.
Oh, she has a book.
Yeah, for the advertising. So this is Pam's new book.
Oh, I want one.
Called Crypto Asset Inheritance Planning, and it's really, really, really useful and like talks about some of these issues like wills and so on.
All right,
And
very cool.
she's starting a series of law courses that are CLE approved. I think she's going to be going around to quite a few locations, giving presentations on how to actually do the best kind of estate planning. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah, hey, she's another lawyer. We can get her for the show. It's amazing. I know an unreasonable amount of lawyers. It's really fascinating.
Well, at least, Tone, if anything happens to you, that a bunch of people will like jump and take
We'll
care
see.
of it.
We'll see about that.
That's why you're freaking doing it. I got it.
You know it's gonna happen sooner or later. Hey, it's like I heard. Who did I hear this from? Might have been like Cody Wilson. If you guys know who Cody Wilson is, that's the guy that invented the 3D printer gun. And he's now.
Oh, I watched the video. I saw a video about that. Yeah.
Yeah, he's got permanently banned from buying a 3D printer. As funny as that sounds. But hey, I think was it he who said it or somebody said it, like, hey, if you're gonna be on a list, you might as well be near the top of the list because then everybody knows who you are, and you have a community behind you. But
so everyone donate money to Tone. The link is in the info, so he can pay our retainer eventually.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of which, hey, here's one more thing. Okay, so retainer, right?
Yeah.
So what do you guys think as lawyers to kind of lock up X amount of Bitcoin for a friend with some kind of a multi-sig that automatically goes to my defense fund if I get arrested? Or can the government seize claim on that?
That's like
it's not a pre-retainer. It's still like it's a multi-sig that in a contract that only activates as a retainer the moment I get arrested.
So you can't see funds for a defense fund.
Awesome thing that you've actually said all day today.
Yeah.
I think it makes sense.
I have been thinking about this for a while.
We wouldn't even have to tell anyone about it because of attorney-client privilege.
Right.
Well, so here's something that's interesting that we've sort of looked into on our end is if I donate money to a multi-sig wallet, if I donate money through a multi-sig wallet will automatically distribute at the occurrence of some future event, but I'm donating it at, let's say a 5 Bitcoin at $7,000. And then by the time it actually gets distributed, it's worth, $10,000 or $100,000 or whatever. There's an interesting question regarding the tax, the tax base that you're actually donating from. And there's some very tricky and interesting tax planning that you can do through smart contracts when you set up a nonprofit. And you can set up a nonprofit that is specifically a defense fund, and those assets are protected against forfeiture because it's really me donating to you to use for a specific purpose, and it's not your asset initially.
Hey, any lawyer part of the show that wants to start a company like that, I think this would be very useful for a lot of Bitcoiners, especially local Bitcoin dealers like Teresa, that can like slowly fund, a potential defense fund with the money because they know they're operating in a gray area and it's something that is tax deferred through something like this, through some kind of a scheme. I know I would be funding one right now.
I don't know why you're not funding one at all right now, to be honest with you.
maybe I secretly am, and it's a separate cold story.
For a friend.
Yes. No, but okay. So do we have time for one more story? Oh, we do. Yes, because it's a Caribbean story. So Adela, this is in your wheelhouse. So let's talk about Roger Vere's home country of St. Kitts.
There's Island.
Yes, the home country of St. Kitts, realizing there is a Bitcoin ATM in their country, and they don't seem to be very happy about it.
Think of the children.
Say again?
I said, think of the children. There's a
Yes.
Bitcoin ATM in the country.
Yes. And it looks like the Caribbean, because they're all a bunch of tiny islands, and they have like some kind of joint laws when it comes to, consumer protections and stuff like that. And Caribbean, that's also Adela, that's your domain and your area. So give it to us. What's going on over there?
Yeah, so the ECCB, which is actually like located on St. Kitts. So the federation is called St. Kitts and Nevis, and it's actually two very tiny islands that are very close to each other, and you have to take like a ferry or plane to get from one to the other. But it's sort of like one sort of like regulatory like scheme mostly. Okay. So the ECCB, who's kind of like who's tasked with being our currency board as well for conversion, right? In the Eastern Caribbean. I know I put that in quotes, not supposed to be in quotes. For the Eastern Caribbean, has put out this warning, saying that, look, we understand that there is a Bitcoin ATM, and just be very careful because this thing is not regulated. I mean, as far as nasty go, it's not a nasty message, right? It's just saying like, look, guys, there's no recourse if something goes wrong. It's not a normal, when I say normal, it's not your sort of usual ATM. We don't have anything to do with this. So I think it's actually kind of smart in a sense that they're kind of saying like, this doesn't belong to us. It's not under our purview. We have nothing to do with this. Use at your own risk. I also think it's a little sad as well that, we have to have all these sort of hand-holding around personal responsibility. Because generally, if an adult is using a BTM, an adult is using a BTM, especially in a jurisdiction where they have not dealt with cryptocurrencies very much at all, except, just to have Roger's team like there full time, which I have to say, really nice guys. I don't want to annoy you, Tone, but I really had a great time with them last year. No,
I mean, there's lots of like nice people. People still give me a hard time for having dinner with fake Satoshi when I was in London. It was like, I told people, it's really, really funny. I mean, yeah, we obviously, he's not Satoshi. Everybody knows that, including himself. And he's a Bcash maximalist, the way I am a Bitcoin maximalist. But we had a hell of a time talking about how Ethereum is an unlicensed, unregistered security. Like, we had plenty of things in common talking about shitcoins. We just disagreed on what Bitcoin was.
Right. But I mean, what do you guys think about this BTM? I mean, I obviously, the people running this stuff wouldn't have to go.
All right, let me just comment real quick here, right? So I agree with you, right? Like, the government shouldn't have to, do a bunch of hand holding. I know that my chat box is about to just go nuts because I seem to be on the side of the government here. But here's the thing, right? Like, I agree that the government shouldn't be hand holding. However, I want this ATM company to be regulated. And I don't want it to be regulated by the crypto space because the crypto space is generally incompetent.
How would you, wait. Okay, so you're making a suggestion, which actually really kind of annoys me sometimes when people do stuff like that, when they say, okay, this thing could be better, but they don't really say how it could be better. Who do you think should regulate this? Do you think it should be by a private entity? Do you think it should be by like a governmental entity? Like, who should regulate this?
Well, I mean, who regulates the current ATM network to make sure that the machines are legitimate, right? Is it a government entity or is it a private entity?
Of course.
Well, which one?
It's a government entity. I'm not sure what it is in St. Kitts, but it's definitely there.
Okay, then I don't see why it shouldn't be any different, right? I mean, I want some kind of regulation to make sure this is a legitimate ATM machine. Now, here's the other question: is it a Bitcoin ATM machine or is it a Bcash ATM machine pretending to be a Bitcoin ATM machine, right? And who's regulating that?
Actually, I'm actually gonna go and check this out. I have to see about a man about a horse in St. Kitts very soon, maybe in the next month or so. I'm actually gonna probably do the show live from St. Kitts.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, and I'm gonna take pictures if I can't, do it live by this machine, because I want to actually use it online and see how it works, or if it works. If it doesn't work, that would be awesome as well, because like it would just be really cool to kind of go through how easy it is, what kind of the machine might be doing KYC. So what a lot of people do sometimes when there is, when there isn't clarity on what they're supposed to do, is that they try to just do like, 20x. So they will collect information and
right. And the KYC thing is the thing that I hate. Like, I don't want there to be KYC. I want the machine and the people that are servicing the machine and the people that built the machine. I want those people regulated, not the people buying from the machine.
Dude, you've been yelling about KYC for years. Like, I swear to God, I remember you yelling about KYC last year, the year before that, KYC. But I mean, how else do you actually regulate an industry like that? Do you have a better solution?
Yeah, well, but that's the thing, right? I don't. You don't need to regulate the ATM industry by regulating the users. I don't want to regulate the users. I want to regulate the solicitors of those users.
Good. Okay. You want to have them be responsible. Okay. So perhaps through some sort of insurance, you must have insurance to run something like that. Because
I don't even care about insurance. Like,
no, Tony, you are talking about insurance because you're actually talking about recourse. I think your concerns for KYC and all of this stuff and, just regulation, right, actually stems from recourse. That's what you're concerned about, is people who are like...
No, not recourse. I want preemptive regulation on the industry providing the service, not the users of that service. It would be great whether there's a government or like a private company that's responsible for making sure these ATM machines are legit. And if they're gonna sell, if they're gonna sell you Bitcoin, they're selling you Bitcoin and not Bcash. But I don't want KYC on the users. I mean, KYC on the users is not regulating the industry. It's basically, it's horrible. I want the users to fall under some kind of privacy protection.
It's satisfying the regulators, but you're saying
in the opposite way, that it should.
Tone, if I may make a suggestion, is I'm guessing a lot of people who are watching this would agree with that perspective. And we're in a very interesting time in the development of this entire industry, where the regulators, depending on whether it's in St. Kitts or in the United States or at the federal government level, they are just starting to think about these issues. And there's an opportunity for us as a community to actually influence how the regulations are being crafted and how they're being interpreted. So I would encourage, people to reach out and donate to like Coin Center or to reach out to local and state and federal and country, depending on what country who your representatives are, and advocate on behalf of the industry from a position that's, generally beneficial to your locality, to whether it's a state or government. There's an argument that you can be made that we are more free as a society by not requiring every transaction that goes through a Bitcoin ATM to go through KYC. But just saying that it isn't fair is not going to accomplish anything. But there's an academic way of approaching this that I think the industry desperately needs right now. And the people who are watching this now can start that. But there's arguments to be made, but unfortunately they're applying KYC requirements. At the state levels, they're requiring KYC requirements, unless they're not. Some states on the money transmission side are requiring quite a lot of information being taken in. Some are requiring almost nothing when it goes to crypto. We have an opportunity to influence this now, and depending on where you are, I would say get involved, because so few people know about this industry at this point, and are talking to the people who are ultimately regulating them.
Guys, I have to leave. I have a call at 5:30, so.
All right, thank you, Adela. Just mention our audience where they can find you and where you're located, like business wise.
Well, please don't find me. But
Okay.
if you want to follow me on Twitter, which I don't really have I'm not a huge Twitter person. You can follow me at Bitcoin Khaleesi. Yeah. Or send me a message on Telegram.
All right. Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Bye, Adela.
Thanks,
Bye,
Adela.
guys. Thank you so much.
Thanks. All right, Sasha, let's get your thoughts on the Bitcoin ATM, and then we're going to wind this down. We can definitely talk about this all day, and we'll definitely do one more of these next week.
Yeah, I personally am on the side where I would love to see it where we didn't have to put in the KYC information to use the machine. But from the government's perspective, I don't think we're ever going to get there, because how would they tax on that if we didn't have, it would just create a whole network of ways for people to avoid their taxes. So I don't think we're ever going to get to a point, no matter what kind of thoughtful academic information we submit to them, saying we shouldn't require KYC. I just think that they're always going to want that. So I think in order for the whole Bitcoin movement to keep going forward, we have to come up with more and more creative ways to maintain privacy beyond Bitcoin ATMs, because I don't think those are going to be a way for securely moving it without facing risk of regulation.
All right, final thoughts, Justin?
Yeah, I think each state and the federal government are still trying to figure out how to interpret it. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that eventually regulation will just put different tranches of KYC regulation depending on how much you're actually transacting, and maybe up until a certain point you're just like Tone said, pre-registering from the service provider. But the Bitcoin ATM is going through some licensing requirement. They're putting up some bond, and they're checking to make sure that person X is not transmitting more than whatever $1,000 to the ATM. Then once you hit a threshold, then you need to, at the customer level, provide information. That might be a solution. It might not make everyone happy, but it's maybe a starting place, because it's certainly better than the alternative, which is every time you need to, transact or exchange in Bitcoin, in some cases, you need to give quite a lot of information, which is a bit repressive.
Yeah, I think I work as I'm listed as a compliance person for a Bitcoin ATM company. So I've just recently went through all the fun stuff with getting that money service business application. I think what you just described would be the best way to do it. If you can make an account offline, put in your information the same way that you would with an exchange or Coinbase, and then use that ATM, that would satisfy every regulator, but I don't see a way to do it anonymously in America anyway.
To give the sort of Antonopoulos answer, though, the best way to avoid this is just only transact in Bitcoin and don't go in and out of fiat.
Exactly.
Mine your own Bitcoin and use it if you can.
Yeah, that's my recommendation as well. But hey, not everybody accepts Bitcoin yet.
Not yet.
All right, guys, let's wrap up the show. Let's go ahead and say our goodbye. So, Justin, so tell our people where they can find you on Twitter and closing statements.
Yeah, so you can find me at Winston Ono Wales, and I think it's probably linked somewhere with you. And if you'd like to find my law firm profile, you can go to justinwales.com and it'll link you there, or carltonfields/blockchain, I think will also link. And I think, Tone, I sent you, I think in a private message, the article that has all the state regulations. So if you need a quick primer on what's happening in your state, you can look at that. And it's updated every 3 months.
It's live updating.
He put it on the chat too here.
Excellent. Yeah, no, I'll do that every 3 months. I'll do a quick screen share just for people in case they wanna, Google for it themselves.
Yeah.
but I will add this into the video description after we end the show.
And shout out to Matt Cohen,
Great.
who wrote it with me.
Who wrote it with you?
Matt Cohen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. More potential lawyers to bring on the show. Perfect.
Yeah.
All right, Sasha, give us your.
Oh, yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Sasha Hodler, and my law firm's information is dltlawgroup.com. So you can contact us there too. And thank you so much for having me on, and really, really enjoyed it and learned a lot from the other guests. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, guys. And we are going to try and bring you the show weekly on Thursdays or Fridays, try to, accommodate as many people as we can. I try to be flexible with the hours. And thank you so much for watching. I know this is probably one of my favorite, well, kind of. Sometimes like ignorance is bliss, but I think out of all my shows, this is the show that I get to learn the most. So I'm hoping it's the same for all of my followers. So thank you so much for watching, guys. And I'll see you probably this weekend for some show, but morning briefs are Monday through Friday. This show is at the end of the week, and I'll try to bring you more and more interesting guests. All right. Thank you, guys. See you all on the next one.
Thank you.